Donald Trump's going to lose this election for sure against the system.
No.
In a physical way.
Wrong.
I don't think that's wrong.
Read a book.
I haven't seen the Civil War, Tim. I'm going to be honest with you, and it doesn't look to me like the political will is there to do it.
I don't know if you've ever actually read history books. Perhaps you,
a guy like me, read? Yes, I've read history books. Conditions were set for the Weimar Republic. We had massive inflation.
I think you're either being purposefully obtuse or you cannot comprehend basic facts.
Welcome back to Rattlesnake TV, guys. In this video, we're going to be going through some of the highlights of a recent debate between Andrew Wilson, Tim Pool, and Richard Spencer. Now, this one's a fascinating one because they go into topics such as the birth rate decline and what might be some of the solutions there, as well as the upcoming election and what the blowback might be from whatever happens with that one. And also, Andrew gives a lot of pushback to Tim about his Civil War theory. So I think you guys will really enjoy this one. And now for the first bit about the declining birth rates in the West and the demographic problems that we are facing.
You bring in education, you bring in modernity, and that is coinciding with lowering birth rates. That happens all over the place. That's happening in Mexico. Yeah. So people say like, oh, the Mexicans are going to overwhelm us. I'm not so sure. They're going through their own demographic
That's
decline.
correct.
Iran is going through their decline.
The
only one that's
world.
not is Africa.
Well, nope, and Israel.
Oh, okay.
Israel also isn't. So Israel surprisingly has the highest birth rates out of all Western nations because they have a mass IVF program. Because they looked around and said we're completely surrounded by people who want to kill us. So we probably should boost our numbers.
It's 2.9 in Israel.
Yeah, it's because they had a mass IVF program. And so here's what happened. Right. The patriot portion of this, the patriotic messaging, the propaganda, if the governments of these nations begin a propaganda campaign saying, you're patriotic, go have sex with your wife and give us mini babies. Right? It doesn't take that much convincing. Israel proved that it doesn't take that much convincing.
I don't disagree with this.
It's much easier, real quick. Just all they have to do, if they really wanted to boost the fertility rate in the United States, is go to Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and change the algorithm to, I would say, 51% of posts on the front page are women with babies. Yeah. And then what happens is young women and young men see a mom and a dad with a kid getting millions and millions of views, and they're like, ooh, I got to do that because I don't get famous.
But government propaganda assists with this.
So much of the stuff that we're talking about right now, honestly, I think could be fixed if you did just stuff like what you're talking about. Started having society uphold family values.
Propaganda.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's propaganda, yeah. But the fact of the matter is, like, the United States is propagandizing the American people anyways, right? All of the LGBT stuff, all that stuff is a form of propaganda, and it's not coming straight out of the government, but it's from it speaks to the zeitgeist.
I mean, it does, though. It comes from NGOs, and they're definitely moving hand in hand with government entities.
You can print all the money in the world that you want. If you don't have the labor that money buys, that money is toilet paper. And so without the fertility rate,
we don't have the human capital.
And so what they'll do is they will give their $1,000 check to a Social Security recipient who will then walk outside and say, I'm old and I need my butt wiped and I have no kids. Can I pay someone to do it? And there will be no one there. A tumbleweed will roll by. And they'll say, well, what good is this money? There's no one to do the labor. Right. So what can they do?
Well, I'll tell you what they're going to do. They're going to bank on it, mass migration.
Yes.
And this is, if you even read the modern papers from NGOs, these NGOs they see that this is an issue. They've foreseen this going to be an issue for a while. Now that we're in the issue, they're going to bank on mass migration, especially from African nations, which are some of the only ones that have a birth rate, which is raising. They're gonna, and that's why you see so many African migrants coming in now. As Mexico's birth rate decreases because they are fast becoming a much more industrialized first world nation, right? It's decreasing. All South American nations' birth rates are decreasing. How are you going to pull from them when they don't have the human capital either? But they're going to focus on African migrants.
This is the problem of the current administration, and I don't just mean the Biden administration, but the political powers in the United States. The presumption that just bring in as many as you can to bolster the tax base and create kids for the next generation. The problem is they, as managers of that system, will not last with it. So if you bring in people who don't know how to run a machine like this, simply because they will do the jobs that you can then tax to pay for the older generation, you will still have an older generation that requires more people. Eventually, you will not, once again, have enough people because fertility is still going to be low. And then there will be no one left to take over and inherit your machine unless you actually segment yourself and your family and your kids and your community away from the machine you built.
Yeah, well, this is actually a good segue because we also have a golden opportunity to make our country extremely powerful if we're some of the first to the forefront in getting the birth rate back up, especially through propaganda. I mean, the whole world's about to suffer from this. If you can imagine if we were one of the few nations on planet Earth in the West that had a birth rate as high as what Israel's is, we'd have a massive advantage in human capital, having a homogenous nation. Our inventiveness would be through the roof. Everything going forward would be better if we did that. That should be a #1 policy. Nobody's even talking about it. A couple of people in Congress are kind of making mentions about it. That's it. So yeah, I think that's going to be one of the biggest problems.
Yeah, but it doesn't solve.
Even in my lifetime.
I think I don't disagree with so much of what you're saying, but it doesn't solve this issue of this radical natalism that is at least suggested by someone.
What the hell is radical natalism?
Well, just go with it. Don't let's not get caught up on this.
Yeah, I just want to know what it is. What is it?
Have tons of kids. We'll soon be in the stars. That we need, 7 billion more, etc. We're going to start declining from 8 billion coming up
quickly.
Yeah. But if you're just saying have more children, that sounds like you're going to fill up more and more favelas. To be honest. Like, it doesn't follow that there's simply more people out there, like, who breathe oxygen and are, big-brained apes, mammals, and you're going to therefore reach the stars. I could easily argue that
but I'm not making
promoting fertility around the issue also
right now I'm talking about populating
around
this planet. I'm not even talking about the stars.
I know, but promoting fertility is going to create a colossal global underclass. And you're not going to outbreed them. Even evangelicals.
Wait. Hang on. So what? That's scalable. So not breeding, you're still going to have a colossal underclass. It's a scalability thing. Yes, more people in the underclass. I guess that's tangentially true, but so what? Doesn't matter. Ultimately, that doesn't matter. You need to have logistics. Yeah, but you need to have people running ships, and you need to have them driving trucks, and you need to have them doing this.
Advance us towards the stars or something. I mean, we need to understand, like, we're going to have to manage
I'm not talking about bringing up the birth rates of people who have sustainable birth rates.
I understand. I'm just pointing out there's, like, just outright natalism brings its own issues. But you were going to say something.
Well, I mean, I guess in a bizarre way, but here's the thing. It really, the main thing is that pronatalism brings about, a human species that I think we need in order to have any of these other tangential kind of issues sorted out. And right now, the anti-natalists have been winning. They dropped the population bomb all over the world. They said that there was going to be a catastrophe when we reached 8 billion people. The opposite happened. More food than ever. More logistics. More food getting everywhere.
I think that this one was something that's very interesting to bring up in terms of birth rates and the demographic issues. And Israel, in my opinion, is the most interesting case study when it comes to maintaining birth rates. And I think that they've kind of cracked the code. And it's super important to them for a number of reasons, not least of which because they've obviously got countries around them that aren't too fond of them, as Andrew mentioned, but also because they have a big Arab population within Israel that used to outbreed them by quite a bit. But now that's actually changed, and the Jewish birth rate is higher than the Arab birth rate in Israel. And if they didn't reverse this, then just mathematically, the Arab population would eventually become a majority, and they don't want to have that. So maybe the Europeans should start taking notes.
I don't want to have child because it's not good for planets, because I don't want to be bothered by something that pee and poop everywhere, and because I don't have time for that, I just want to care of myself. Thank you.
And now they've got an advantage in the sense that the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community breeds a lot. I mean, they have a birth rate of around 6 or 7 children per woman. But even the secular people have a birth rate of around 2, which is higher than most developed nations. They also have a low percentage of children born outside of wedlock, about 10% compared to America's 40%. Let me repeat that. 40%. They have a low percentage of childless women, about 7%. And in America, it's predicted that by the year 2030, over 50% of women above the age of 30 will be childless. And I'm using America as an example here, but this is also the case for much of Europe, who are suffering a similar demographic problem.
I just want to care of myself. Thank you.
This is because in order to maintain a healthy birth rate in the modern world, there has to be incentives to have children. One of those incentives might be cultural. So if there is a country where it's culturally expected that a man provides and a woman stays at home with the children. Another incentive on the other side of the spectrum would be strong governmental and family support network. So if a woman does decide that she wants to have children and then continue with her career, then there are appropriate measures in place to allow her to do that.
The new measures include a lifetime income tax exemption for women with 4 or more children.
And also a third one I would say would be a strong sense of national pride and a duty to have children in order to raise the birth rates when people are more conscious about this very, very catastrophic issue. And when you look at Israel, they have all 3 of those things, whereas many Western countries have none of them. And this brings us to the point of positive pronatal propaganda. And this being a means of incentivizing a stronger native birth rate. And I actually like what Tim Pool said there. And social media algorithms, as well as the aforementioned duty and national pride, etc., would go a long way to actually making it a status symbol for men and women to be married with children. And if that were the case, and it wasn't a status symbol to just be a boss babe CEO, then that's what people would do. But as is evident when we look around us, the opposite is obviously being pushed. And then in order to combat this, the answer seems to be mass migration from the third world, which is obviously going to be a disaster. And now on to the next bit, which is definitely an interesting back and forth about whether or not they believe that Trump will be the next president.
I think the more likely scenario, this is how I see it playing out. I think that Donald Trump's going to lose this election for sure, and Biden's going to get it. I think that the state will never allow Trump to go back in office no matter what. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. And I think that they'll lie, cheat, and steal if they need to make sure that he never gets back into office. I think that they're more than capable of doing that and will do it.
But that
I actually think Trump's going to win.
You think so?
But I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
And then when they do everything that they do, Republicans with experience from 2020, and I'm not talking about federal level who seem to write a lot of angry letters. I'm talking about state level guys who are a bit more aggressive, say, we've prepared for this eventuality and we've already lined up our legal documents, our legal teams, and we hereby challenge you cannot move forward, and you end up with a constitutional crisis.
Yeah, but that would require Trump also. Trump would have to back him. He would have to be completely defiant to it.
He would not.
He would have to push it. I think he would, because without him, what do they have?
He could concede.
Yeah, he could concede. And if he does, and I think he will, I think he'll concede to it, and I think he'll finally go off because he'll be like, there's just no way anymore to get into this system. I mean, I've done everything I can do. They prosecute me. They take all my cash. They take my family away. They'll destroy me. He has not been a fighter.
I disagree. So possibility, yes.
Yeah.
If this were the case, Trump would have cut a deal a long time ago and said, please leave me alone and I'll go away.
Yeah.
If they offered him one. I mean, that's the thing is, did they offer him one or did they want to make an example out of him? I think they want to make an example out of him. That's what I think.
I think that the likelihood lies with establishment forces meeting with Trump and saying, if you bow out gracefully, make it look real. We'll get you a few good licks in and then throw the match. We're going to leave you and your family alone. And Trump is clearly saying no. I don't see a reality where they're like, let's destroy everything and bring ourselves to the greatest risk we've ever faced, going to war with a man this popular. The first thing any strategist is going to do is say a Pyrrhic victory is not worth it. The risk to ourselves and the damage we incur from going to war with Trump is not worth it. We need to first try and cut a deal to see if he's willing to end the fighting and give us the victory. It's why every legal battle ends in a settlement, and not literally every, because the cost of the suit is greater.
Yeah, I understand. But when I look back to the impeachment, it didn't look like there was any deals trying to be cut ever. It looked like
because Trump won't take them.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe, but I think also I'm not sure that you can deal with him that way. I'm not even sure that he does dealing the same way that you and I would do dealing.
If that's the case, he doesn't concede.
Yeah, but I think he will concede. I think he will end up conceding. I think he doesn't have much choice at this point.
No, I
think come November, Biden wins. And they're going to make sure. I mean, they're not going to let Trump back in office. I'm sorry, guys. They're not going to do it.
I don't disagree with you. I just don't see how Trump supporters, regardless of what Trump does, are just going to be like, well, I guess this is our country now.
So we'll get back into the rest of it in just a second, but I must say, I haven't really thought about this from Andrew's perspective, but it does seem pretty logical. I mean, I personally hold out a lot of hope that Trump will be the next president. However, there is that part of me that thinks there are so many different moving pieces and so many different factors at play.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Whether that be the court case or whether that be the Democrats' antics at election time, that it could definitely be the case that Sleepy Joe has his second term. I mean, the hoops that the left went through to try and crush Donald Trump in 2016 and smear and defame him in every single way, and then the corruption in 2020, it just makes you think that there's nothing they won't do to stop him from coming to power, because he is the ultimate threat to the establishment, to the swamp.
Drain the swamp.
So, I mean, maybe the same thing happens this time that happened last time, and we just see the votes stop getting counted. Or maybe they'll be more organized this time. Maybe it'll be another case of lots of dead people on mail-in ballots.
We found thousands of people in LA County received not one, but 2 ballots in the mail. Thousands more were sent to people who moved or even died.
And then Joe Biden will once again break popularity records, smashing his last one and putting absolutely no doubt in the hearts and minds of Americans that he is the most popular president in the history of the United States of America. Well, I mean, if you feel like you need to have a shower after hearing those words, as I need to brush my teeth, then I'm sure we're not alone. Which is why I think that so much of the conversation around the upcoming election is around potential conflicts. Thinking people know that Donald Trump is more popular than Joe Biden.
And then we have a crowd like this. I don't know. Look, hey, you know, the cameras, are you turning around? These guys are bad people, I swear. They never turn the cameras around, ever. Turn them around. Turn them around.
Hello, 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 hello. My name's Joe Biden.
We know that people don't trust Joe and that they don't think he is capable of being president because of his declining cognitive state and just overall incompetence. And in the last election, things kind of boiled over. So, what happens if something similar occurs in 2024? Well, I mean, Tim Pool has been talking about civil war for a number of years now. So let's hear this interesting back and forth about that subject.
Let's say 1 million people just completely lose confidence and then just decide what's the point. Not any intentional act, not a mass protest. They just literally say, this letter means nothing to me.
Yeah.
So confidence is everything. And the way I've described it is...
But there's no... Where's the will? Like, where's the will? After the 6, for instance...
No. But let me make my point. It's not about will. Will does not factor into this equation. If a clown showed up to your doorstep, banging on the door, you'd say, go away.
Sure.
And what if he said, I have a clown warrant, open your door? You'd be like, get off my property or else. I am from the clown authority, duly elected, and you will be put in clown jail. You'd be like, what is going on? Understanding how absurd that scenario sounds is what happens in middle America after Biden wins a second time, where the entirety of the independent media apparatus is saying the legislative bodies have called Trump the winner, regardless of whether Trump concedes. And then you get some guy at his house and a federal authority shows up and he's like, who are you? And he's like, I'm a federal authority with a warrant. He goes, my county doesn't recognize your warrants. When that stuff spreads because of the mass illegal immigration, which is already resulting in people getting shot and killed, you're going to have locals with guns. Just like, look at the guy in Arizona, the rancher.
Yeah, but why would they loot where there's locals with guns?
Why are they looting where there's locals with
not.
guns? They are.
Where are they looting these places where there's locals with guns?
Chicago?
Chicago is not, that's not a gun-friendly place at all.
It's
the gangs have the guns, and not the citizens.
Wrong. So in Chicago,
Illinois is one of the most, I mean, that's one of the most gun-unfriendly places in the United States.
Yes. And so who has the guns?
The criminals.
And why are they criminals?
Well,
because they have guns.
Well, because
there are too many stories
people
out of
aren't
Chicago.
allowed to defend themselves against
And so
them.
what they do is they illegally acquire the guns because they're scared of the gun violence and they become criminals. So a lot of the stories out of Chicago, it's not gangs. That's just something the media says because they want to dismiss the gun violence. It is honor shootings and local disputes, particularly over women and the view people have of each other. Meaning a guy says, you disrespected me, and they get into a gunfight. Then you end up with a lot of stories where a father typically a black guy, goes to Indiana and buys a gun because he's like, they're shooting up my neighborhood.
Sure.
Then the police of Chicago come in and beat the crap out of him and arrest him for having an illegal gun, and his only crime was having a gun.
Yeah, but
that's
what I'm
a
saying
lot
is
of
I don't see inside of like areas where there's actual gun ownership, where it's not criminalized the same way it is in
West
Illinois.
Virginia just saw in Charlestown a woman murdered by an illegal immigrant.
Yeah, but that's not a mob breaking into a store.
No, but it is a component of lawlessness. The federal government will not enforce our borders.
Yeah.
And now criminals, rapists, and murderers, and some I think are good people.
Sure.
But the bad people are coming across the border with no enforcement. And the people of West Virginia are strapped to the teeth.
Yeah, but this happens constantly, and I haven't seen a great shift of political will in this.
There's no political will required.
Inside of major metropolitan areas where they won't allow citizens to have guns, and they tell the police to stand down and you could go break in the stores, the people there put up with this shit. I don't know why they put up with this shit.
And this is what you're missing. When that mentality reaches West Virginia is when social order at the federal level breaks down. When the people of West Virginia who are armed to the teeth begin experiencing people looting and illegal immigrants killing people is when illegal immigrants will start getting shot.
I think the big hole here in your argument is that I don't think that they're going to move into places where there's heavily armed store owners and try to loot them, because they will get shot.
Why did the illegal
When I
immigrant
look
come
at
to
Black
Lansing
Lives
and kill
Matter, when
somebody?
Black Lives Matter started to go out to rural districts, they were opposed by people with guns, and they left. They got out of there. They beat feet because they were like, wait a second.
Guys, if you don't mind liking the video and subscribing to the channel, that would be fantastic. And also, if you like these conversations and you want to see the first time that Andrew and I ever had a discussion on the Reality Based podcast, that has its own YouTube channel now. We've made a completely new channel, side project, where we're going to be posting lots of different interviews. So if you like the Reality Based podcast and you want to see lots of different clips from that rather than the whole thing, or if you like the whole thing, then you can subscribe to that channel. We'll leave that below. And also we'll leave the links to the audio on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and also it's on YouTube Music, I think it's called. So make sure to check out those links below. Back to it.
When you're talking about political violence, okay, like the scale that you're talking about, usually that requires...
What scale is that?
What's that?
What scale is that?
If you're talking about actual armed conflict between groups.
So like
that's happening in the streets
three guys
with no law
in Charlestown, West
intervention.
Virginia who take guns because an illegal immigrant killed somebody is large-scale political violence?
I think that you said it's going to be... What you said is this would be a snowball effect. So it starts with these three guys, and then it becomes worse and worse.
In like 10, 20
because
years,
otherwise,
maybe?
if it's just three guys and they go out and do some shit, what is that, right? It
Which
would
is
have
my
to.
point.
It would have to scale it up.
This is the issue I take. Every single time I bring up that these things have already begun, the people who refuse and reject these ideas, in their mind, imagine like General Smith of Texas meeting with General Walter.
That's not what I'm
Oklahoma.
envisioning, though.
I'm not talking about large-scale militia or violence. I'm talking about what happens when small pockets of people recognize or believe, I believe to recognize, that the federal government is no longer enforcing the law. They form neighborhood watch groups.
That's true.
And then what happens when, over the course of a couple of years, these things expand and escalate? You get more and more stories of shootings and chaos and conflict and lootings or otherwise. This is the degradation and the collapse of a civilization. Within 2 years, Antifa on the far left, with rifles, took over numerous cities. You had Atlanta, you had Minneapolis, you had Seattle, you had Portland.
They're cities, though.
In 2020. So within 2 years of me saying escalation of political violence is a real possibility, it got to that point. And why did I think that? I mean, we had numerous instances of political violence.
Yeah, I mean, they had CHOP. They took over whole sections.
Unprecedented.
Yeah, it's unprecedented. But it's
and where are we
their
today?
shit. They're ruining.
Meaningless.
They burned down their police station. They have riots in their cities. The spill over to
Meaningless.
conservative America. That's where I would think I would start to see what you're considering
And
political upheaval.
I view this as the plugging the ears and going la 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 la, never happened, won't happen, can't happen, despite the fact it has literally all happened over the past 7 years. All of it.
Well, I don't think it has. I don't think there is I don't think unless you have a population that's actually hungry and is unentertained, that you're going to see real actionable civil war. What I think instead is happening is you're pointing to leftists who use Black Lives Matter as a kind of a propaganda tool, told their own police to stand down and let them burn their own cities.
It's a great point, though, because it's exactly like you're making a great point. Like in 1861, when the people of Atlanta, in the heart of the Confederacy, came out and said, "We're gonna fight ourselves and our own neighbors because we're mad at each other." No, in in the American Civil War and in the Spanish Civil War and in Russia, it's rural, it's rural, and it's urban. People in Atlanta did not walk out of their houses and go, "Ooh, I'm just angry at my neighbors." No, they walked outside and said, "We all agree with each other. What they're doing over there is crazy."
Right.
People in the North came out and said, "What they're doing down there is crazy." For you to say, "But those are their cities, that's not going to spill over." Well, of course it is. But it's a staunch bifurcation of this country, and you are living under the orders of them. When they allow Antifa to take over, when they allow Antifa, when they get George Soros DAs, when they get in state government, and when they use the legal authority of New York State to imprison your popular frontrunner president, it doesn't matter if it's in their cities. They have taken over. They are willing to use violence. They've killed people, and they will exercise state-level authority at a national level to steal power from you in your conservative town. I do not see a reality.
Well, I don't. Here's what I think ultimately, right? Because we obviously vehemently disagree on this. I think what will happen is come November, Biden's probably going to win. They're probably not going to ever let Trump in office. And I think you're not going to see anybody do shit about nothing. Because I watched as Black Lives Matter went through after they locked everybody in their home. Right? They locked everybody in their home. They shut down the entirety of the United States. People were enraged about it. They were told to wear face masks while these guys were walking around burning down cities.
I got to pause you.
Nobody did shit, Tim. They didn't do nothing.
I got to pause you.
Okay, so Tim actually starts to get very salty in the next part when Andrew starts to call him out about his Civil War rhetoric. But just purely from my perspective, as an outsider looking in at America, as much as I do really love America, there's so many things that I enjoy about it. So many places that I visited in Tennessee in Florida like this that I really did love. I also, as somebody who travels a lot, can't help but notice that America is a very troubled society. In terms of the Republican-Democrat divide, I mean, even though the guys in Washington, Republicans and Democrats, are all basically buddies and milking the same cow, their constituents are unbelievably divided. And I mean, the Democrats have shown this to no end with so much vitriol during the Trump era by slandering the MAGA population as backwards and a basket of deplorables and the rest.
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it.
The cultural decadence through school indoctrination, pride parades, transgenderism, and all of that is second only to the backstreet nightclubs of Berlin. Black Americans are trained from a young age in many cases to hate white people. And obviously there are a lot of black people that are great. And there are a lot of black people and white people that get along just fine. But when you're in America, the resentment is palpable. I'll just leave it at that for this video. Major cities like LA, New York, Austin have an unbelievable amount of people living on the street, drug addicts who have just completely fallen off the wagon of society altogether. Some areas of these cities, when you walk around, it feels like a genuine loony bin. The southern border, just basically open with people flooding into the country, and that could be easily fixed, but they choose not to.
This column of humanity heading north from the countries of Central and South America and well beyond too.
The vast majority of politicians in Washington are essentially bought by lobbies, foreign interest groups, and corporations. A lot of their taxpayer dollars are being siphoned off to foreign wars. So all this and more to say that the situation in America is so dire, in my humble estimation, that if this is to be some sort of an end of an empire moment, it kind of seems like it would go down with a whimper. Or maybe just slowly taper down to the point where it's not the global superpower anymore, but it is top 10 for the next few generations. I don't really know. But I'd be very interested to read your comments, especially you guys who live in America, and particularly if you're a little bit older and if you've seen the country change. How has it changed? Do you feel like things are getting a lot worse? And if you do think this is some sort of an end of an empire situation, how do you think it goes down? So with that, let's hear Tim Pool and Andrew discuss the matter a bit more.
That was neat to see Texas finally do something about their own border and ignore kind of some federal mandates that were going on. But ultimately, again, I got to disagree with you. Here's what I'll put this on record now because it's not that far away. And we can look back on this broadcast later. Come November, chances are good. Trump gets in. Not Trump, Biden gets in. And Trump supporters don't really do anything. He concedes. And that's probably how it's going to go.
Again, I
They're
think
not
you
gonna
live in
let
a
him
movie. I think you think doing something is a guy standing up and saying, "I hereby declare," instead of 7 guys going out and being like, "Hey, can we make sure that any of those trucks coming in don't have the illegals? Because we've had a couple trucks come through here that did, and they've been transporting them." Now, I tried calling ICE, but they won't answer. So Jim and I are going to go out.
Don't consider that a civil war. Just that would be low-scale vigilanteism.
So, right. And what precipitates civil war?
It would have to be some large segment of the population, that 5% or higher, who are doing some type of sedition or considerable treason, what would be considered considerable treason to the United States government. That would be that is what I would consider to be some type of actionable civil warfare.
Just 5%?
Yeah, 10%.
What is it? 60%? 60%? No, it's like 70% of the Republicans think that the Democrats have already committed sedition.
Yeah, I'm sure that they do.
Right,
But
so
they're not acting in a way as though they have.
I think
that's the problem, right? If you think that somebody has truly acted in a way as to be a traitor, right? What do you do to traitors?
Sedition and treason are two different things.
Yeah, I know. But if you were to say that you think a person's acting in such a way that they're a traitor, what do you do to traitors? Last I checked, they get hung, right?
But treason and sedition are not the same thing.
Yeah, I know. But the point of my hypothetical is to say they're not acting in such a way as though these people, while they say you're seditious or they say you're treasonous, whichever one, they're not acting as though they are. They might say it, but they're not acting like it.
What does that mean, they're not acting like
it? Well, if somebody is guilty of sedition, that's firing squad. If they're guilty of treason, they get hung.
Sedition is not.
They don't get worked with.
Sedition is like maximum 10 years in prison, I believe.
Okay, fine. Well, they're not getting 10 years in prison either. But
well, that's the question of whether Donald Trump gets elected. The issue is conservatives overwhelmingly they're not revolutionaries. The question is, do we expect, with everything that's already happened, we're at the point now where since the beginning of this conversation with Donald Trump, they've accused the president of being a traitor. They've accused Donald Trump of being a traitor.
That's true.
They have acted as though he is a traitor. They cemented his feet so that he couldn't run his administration. They effectively levied legal war against him during his entire administration.
Yeah, but you need a percentage of the American public who's acting in accordance with that against the system in a physical way.
Wrong.
I don't think that's wrong.
Read a book.
I mean, just saying.
Every single instance
just saying,
of social...
5 guys are running around with guns in some small scale incursion. That's not fucking civil war.
Didn't say it was civil war.
Well, that's what we're talking about, is civil unrest and civil war.
And what precipitates that is social breakdown when people lose confidence in their government.
I agree. That's what precipitates it. That's true. You have social breakdown. You have social cohesion breaking down.
You're sitting here going...
But that doesn't mean that that's what it is. And you can also, you know what else you can get? Instead of civil war, you can get... instead of revolution, instead of civil war, you can have a renaissance too. Sometimes social breakdowns lead to renaissance. You forget about that as well.
Well, usually you get a revolution or you get a civil war. Civil wars will end with one power structure typically takes over. The outright destruction is rare. Someone always asserts authority. But you get a revolution when no one fights, or you get a civil war when someone decides to fight back. What we could experience is a communist revolution in the United States.
You could.
If the right does nothing. We are facing an election where we already know from 2020 no one will agree on the results. To then say, after this election, everything will be fine, I believe is absurdity.
Okay, so
I agree. I can't believe I'm saying this.
So I'll say this. No, I still have to disagree. This has been going on for years and years, where the American government has prepared for contingencies for civil war. This has been going on forever. And to be honest with you, Tim, you've been talking about the Civil War since long before I even got into online politics. I was listening to you talk about, hey, this is right around the corner. It's coming soon to a theater near you. The stage is set. We're very close to it. And we weren't really that close to it. So the thing is like...
Do you think January 6th wasn't a dramatic escalation of political violence?
I think that you could have a lead up over many years. Over many years.
So I was correct. What did the SPLC accuse me of?
What do you mean? When did you predict Jan 6?
In September. Oh, I love this because it's in the lawsuits against me too. SPLC's written about it because in like September of or it might have been August of 2020, I said, if Donald Trump loses, you're going to see dudes showing up in D.C. They're going to lose their mind and storm the White House or something because they are not going to accept this. You're right. it wasn't the White House. It was the Capitol building. And then they wrote, Tim Pool had foreknowledge of January 6th, and here's proof because he predicted. No, it's because I read. And I said, wow, based on everything these people are saying and preparing for, they're going to go to D.C. and do something like this. And then they did.
Yeah, but I think if you say that the sky is falling enough times, just like Alex Jones, eventually a couple of those things are correct.
In 2018, when I said escalation of political violence is going to reach a massive tipping point, and then in 2020, they firebombed St. John's Church and the White House grounds, and they took over numerous cities, I predicted that. So to say, you've been saying for a long time it's around the corner, and every time you say something's going to happen, it does, but you're still wrong. Dude, I don't care if I'm wrong.
Well, it's not every time you say it that it doesn't happen. What I'm saying is that you've made the prediction so many times. I've heard it so many times on your show. Are we this close? We're this close to civil war. It's right around the corner, ladies and gentlemen. And the real question is, what will happen when the civil war gets here? I haven't seen the Civil War, Tim. I'm going to be honest with you, and it doesn't look to me like the political will is there to do it. Now, the January 6th people went quietly into the night, and nobody's really saying much about that either.
So the first thing I'll say academically is I don't know if you've ever actually read history books. Perhaps you,
a guy like me, read? Yes, I've read history books. And
well, so when you read articles specifically about various historical periods, you realize that we condense it in our history books. And so when we talk about the rise of Hitler, people tend to forget that it's like 20 years through Weimar Germany leading up to this point where this guy rises to power. And so
the conditions were set for the Weimar Republic. We had massive inflation.
I think you're either being purposefully obtuse or you cannot comprehend basic facts.
Well,
and the intentional being intentionally obtuse is to say, I recognize that many different academics have predicted civil war, state that we're in civil strife. You said political violence is going to escalate. The Summer of Love did happen. You said in 2020 that a bunch of angry Trump supporters are going to go to D.C. and storm, the White House. It wasn't the White House, it was the Capitol building. You got that one right. And you've been warning about how these things lead to each other. And now today, as of today, because the Civil War didn't kick off at any of those time periods, you've been wrong to predict these things are escalating. The first thing is, when I say, hey, look, here's a guy who said this thing is happening, that's not me predicting it. That's saying a Princeton professor has made this prediction. A former CIA official has made this prediction. Numerous security advisors have made this prediction. Canada is saying it's improbable. So it's not necessarily a prediction, but they're concerned about its potentiality. Investors are now making this prediction. We are in civil strife. I'm not making that up, nor am I predicting it. I'm saying that's an assessment of leaders in politics, infrastructure,
and culture. Of some leaders, of some people, not of every. There's no united academia saying there's a right around the corner, guys. That's not happening. You pull the sources that you want because they help craft your narrative, Tim.
And then when the Summer of Love happens, I was wrong.
Okay, so again, if you say the sky is falling every single day, eventually you get some keys of it right. But I've been hearing this from you for a long, long, long time. What have you heard from here? Again, I'll repeat it. I have listened to you long before I was ever inside of any type of political commentary. I was listening to you talk about coming civil wars, how this is happening.
What was wrong?
In the next few months, next few months, this could really set the stage between the states and this for a new civil war.
What was wrong? What was wrong?
They just didn't happen.
What didn't happen?
None of these civil wars that you.
What civil wars did I predict that didn't happen? What civil wars?
Well, I didn't come in with a list of all the times Tim Pool's predicted civil war, but dude,
okay, you're at the point
famous for it.
You're at the point where you've lost the argument and you're making things up.
What part of the argument did I lose?
You said that I predicted a civil war would happen at a period.
No, I'm saying that you talk about it constantly.
Right.
And I have not.
What was I wrong about?
I haven't seen any of the evidence of this.
Summer of Love is not evidence.
No, it's not. There's no civil war, even from the Summer of Love. That's not a civil war.
When did I predict the Summer of Love would lead to a June 21st civil war in the United States?
I mean, that's what we're talking about right now, though, is the leading. So when is this? So let's be hyper specific then. What area, what decade, next 5 years, next 4 years, next 3 years, do you think we'll see a civil war? Or is it something you're talking about that's 30 or 40 or 50 years down the road? Or do you just not know?
Literally, I've said, I don't know.
You don't know.
And so you made up that I predicted a civil war at a specific period.
No, I'm saying that that's all I've heard you talk about for years.
What was I wrong about?
Again, Tim, I didn't come in prepared to debate with you. Came in prepared to debate with Richard Spencer. But I'm happy to actually come in again, and I will bring a list of everything Tim Pool has been wrong about if you want me to from
I'm
failed
wrong
predictions.
about a lot.
Yeah, okay. Well, then that makes my point.
But the idea that I would recognize me saying these things might happen and being wrong about it does not mean that I'm in general wrong about the bulk of what I'm saying right now. The issue is numerous academics articles have recognized the basis of what civil strife is. I don't care if we're looking for a national committee of recognizing civil strife. Civil strife is a period described as political violence, death caused by political violence, and increasing political instability. We can then assess everything that's going on and determine whether or not we think that's true, and everyone's allowed to have their opinion. But in 2018, when I said, hey, this political violence is going to get worse, and then it did. And then I said, man, I think if Trump loses, you're going to get a ton of these people on the right going to D.C. They're going to lose their minds. They're going to be like storming the White House or whatever. And then it happened. And so those are just two big examples where I'm like, X equals Y. I hope that doesn't happen. Where we're at now is all of these things are behind us. These have all happened. And I say, if you look at history and what these things tend toward, and when you look at what has been said 6 years ago and what it has tended toward and what has already happened, things don't bode well for us in November. And you go, no, we're fine. And I'm like, okay, whatever.
That's not what I said. So I've been kind enough not to strawman you. Don't strawman me. I didn't say.
You said Biden's going to get elected.
No, it'll be fine.
Biden's going to get elected. Yeah. No one's going to do anything.
That's more akin to what I'm saying. That I think that it is likely that Biden gets re-election. Okay, and that you don't see a civil war from it. Yeah, you might see some activism, might see some small-scale violence that happens. No, I don't think it's going to lead.
You've been strawmanning the whole time.
I don't think it's going to lead to anything widespread. To be honest, I don't.
You're still strawmanning because my point.
How can I strawman my position?
You're strawmanning my position.
I wasn't talking about your position.
I did not say Joe Biden getting elected starts a civil war.
Tim, I was talking about Andrew Wilson's position is not Tim Pool's. I can't strawman myself. It's my position.
You said, I don't think Joe Biden getting elected will start a civil war. That's great.
That's my position. When did I say it was yours?
But why would you make a point that I don't disagree on that has nothing to do with my position?
Because I just wanted to give you my position so that you understood my position.
Okay, so I don't know what your argument is.
My argument is that I don't believe that there's going to be widespread political violence. Even though I think Trump is going to lose, I don't think there's going to be widespread political violence. That's my point.
So, I mean, bit unnecessarily aggressive there by Tim. Can you comprehend facts? Do you read books? Someone needs to tell Tim that Andrew is quite the book guy. But as somebody who is a long-term listener of Tim Pool's show, I can confirm what Andrew's saying. I mean, before the 2020 election and during and after, I would say that I went through quite a long period where I would listen to Tim Pool's show every single day. And I mean, he was definitely talking about civil war a lot. And for a while there, he kind of had me convinced that there was going to be a civil war. And I would almost go as far as to say that that was like his shtick for a while. That was his thing, that he was saying there's going to be a civil war, and he was kind of hanging his hat on it in a way. Because if there was some sort of a major political conflict, and obviously not Jan 6 and the 2020 riots, I wouldn't say that that was akin to a civil war.
Unbelievable. Yeah, we are televising the breach,
listen,
by the way.
But if there was something major to happen, then it would have been a great prediction. And I don't even think that it's the worst call, and who knows, there could be something like that to happen. I mean, the political divide in America, coupled with the fact that so many people have guns, makes that a possibility. And was Tim maybe a little bit overzealous with the prediction? Yeah, sure. I mean, we all make predictions that don't come to fruition. But honestly, just the way I see it, as time goes on, I become less and less interested in the idea that America could have some civil war because they seem more demoralized than anything. And even if there were to be some sort of a glaringly obvious steal that happens in November, I'd say that even if that does happen, then the blowback would probably look pretty similar to last time, where a bunch of people get together somewhere, they cause a big ruckus, a bunch of them get arrested, the media demonizes them, and then under the pressure, Trump would probably be forced to concede, and then there would be a few debates about it for the next few years, and the left would say that the right are fascists and that Trump didn't want to give up power, and then the right will say that the left are like the real fascists. But ultimately, I don't think that there would be any sort of major conflict. All the while, the countries that the West deems to be their greatest competition, or even their enemies, will continue to join together, make economic alliances, and move power eastward. So, just my ramblings, could be completely and utterly wrong. If you guys want to let me know about it and send me abusive messages, you can find my social media down below. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, you can click right here. And if you'd like to watch another one, right here. Till next time, I'm Jake. This is Rattlesnake TV, keeping you armed and dangerous.